I'm Ryan. This is my brother Daniel, and this is Rolls in the Family. And today we've got a little bit of a spicy topic, Daniel. This is we tend on this channel focus largely, I'd say 90+% of our effort on recommendations and things we enjoy and the games we like. We have a few videos where we talk about games we've gotten rid of, but this is similar to those culling videos, but kind of looking back at all of the years of games that maybe didn't work for us. What are the ones that are like the most popular that we didn't enjoy for whatever reason? And I guess I shouldn't say didn't enjoy. You know, this isn't going to be a list where it's like, people love this game and I think it's awful. I think it's terrible.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, maybe Daniel feels that way. I'm looking through the 10 games we're going to talk about, and every single one of them, I actually rate a 7 or higher. So they're games I enjoyed, but I didn't feel they were worth keeping for my taste. And, you know, we're kind of looking at that difference between how much we enjoyed it and some of these people love. You know, it's very possible your favorite game of all time might be talked about today.
This is the video that's going to bring the haters out, man.
Yeah. Everybody's different, you know. Not everybody's going to like the same games.
It's true.
We always love when people comment, but this one especially is kind of a fun one to hear. What is a game or games that seem to be really popular, people love it, and it just did not land for you? You know, you bounced off of it or decided that you didn't feel like coming back to it. You can drop that in the comments below. We will include links to all the games we talk about in the description. They are popular. If you want to go with the majority and not how we felt about it, then check those out below. This is going to be a shared list. Like, we kind of assembled 10 games together because we do have kind of an overlap in our thinking here, and you'll have to forgive us if we forget some details here on how to. You got to understand, some of these games we, played years ago and got rid of, and so it's digging a little bit in the memory bank to remember exactly how they worked and what we didn't enjoy.
So if we hate on your favorite game and completely describe it wrong, we apologize.
You can call us out in the comments. It's fine. It's fine. Let's get this started though.
Okay.
With our number 10, and this is an interesting one. So the history here, you had gotten the game Great Western Trail first, actually, and I played it with you, and I was like, man, this is among like kind of Euro games I played, this was a really fresh, enjoyable experience. I think I played it almost 4 times with you, and then finally decided I think I got to add this to my collection. Well, right around that time, they were releasing Maracaibo, which was a new kind of iteration on the Great Western Trail formula. But, Daniel, it added cards, like almost like a Terraforming Mars or something, like a deck of card abilities combined with
perfect.
It sounded on paper like this is like what I would want. Like, and so I got it for my birthday. I remember. I specifically asked for it because I was like, I think this could be really the one that I want to own. And I remember me and your wife played it, and it was a learning game, and we were kind of figuring things out and stuff.
Yeah.
But we all were having the same feeling of, when would I ever want to play this over Great Western Trail? Like, It has some similarities, but I think for us, the things it removed were things we really, really like about Great Western Trail. And some of the things it added we didn't find maybe as compelling. So for example, we love in Great Western Trail the deck building, like try to get your hand right before you get to Kansas City, and how that affects the pacing. Well, you don't have that anymore. And you don't have the pacing of like, how many times do I go around? Because it's just once around each round, I guess, and you can kind of control the pacing as a group of like, you could push the pace, but it just was a different feel, and I really missed that piece of it.
For sure.
And then I remember one of the systems they added in was like the country area control stuff, which was like, okay, like you kind of invest in these different things or whatever, but I just didn't find it that compelling. I don't know. So We played it once, and I went and I sold it, and I bought Great Western Trail in the expansion. And I was like, "Yep, if anything, it confirmed Great Western Trail is the game for me." But
I felt so bad after that game because we didn't acknowledge it out loud right away because
you don't know how other people are feeling. Yeah,
and like you had just gotten this, you were excited about it, and just like internally, I'm just like, I objectively like Great Western Trail more.
Yeah.
And so that was, very rarely do we, usually we're pretty generous with games after okay, get through the first play, it's a little rougher, give it some time. I don't know. I feel like this one, we really were just like.
Well, and I think it's because when it shares so much DNA with a previous game you're familiar with, it's so much easier to kind of compare and be like, which of these do I kind of prefer? I know Maracaibo also has kind of this light campaign thing you can do, but that's just not something we're really looking for in that game. We just want to kind of do one-off games of it.
For sure. Also like the theme of Great Western Trail more too. I'll just add that.
Daniel just likes the cover of the original Great Western Trail.
That guy, he just
we both have wonderful. We both have the first edition. So there you go. We definitely enjoy Great Western Trail more than Maracaibo. Up to number 9. So this is a game that I think a lot of people I've seen hailing it as a modern classic. This is being elevated to the tiers of some of these, games like Ticket to Ride, Catan, Dominion, things that really kind of stand the test of time in this weight maybe of kind of lighter, more accessible games. And we enjoyed this one. This is one that you had. I played it a couple times. You played it more than me. Had a good time with it. I just don't think we see it quite at that level that others seem to. And I want to say you got rid of it.
That is correct.
Yeah, so neither of us own it. This is Azul. And Azul, I mean, it was popular enough that they keep making spin-offs of it. I don't know how many versions there are at this point. There's Azul Chocolate Edition and, all these different things.
You can make anything.
And I think it's a really solid system. And with the drafting and kind of how it works I just am having a hard time seeing what elevates it so much higher than maybe others kind of in this genre.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me was the thing that you were building or on your board just wasn't that compelling for me. I don't,
it's mechanically sound, how it works with the different lengths, but it's not. It's very abstract.
And every person, it's kind of the same thing. It's not like a game where it's I've got this kind of. I think about a Ticket to Ride. You've got your own kind of unique thing that you're doing versus what other people are doing, where it just felt kind of very the same. The mechanics are great. I will say the one mechanic that just didn't vibe with me is this game can be mean.
It can be quite mean, yeah.
Especially if you're playing well, you can really set someone up to just get
especially
ruined.
If it's 2-player where now it's zero sum and it's me destroying the other player is just as good as helping me.
Yeah, so it's kind of that combination of both sound mechanics, but nothing that was wow, grabbing me or whatnot, and then you just add a little bit of the icky feeling with some of the mean stuff. I don't think we typically really mean to each other games. We're okay with confrontation, but we don't
well, especially in a game where it's if this is going to be in our collection, it's to be a very accessible pull out with a wide variety of groups. And so that kind of game, I'm not usually looking for really mean moves.
Hey, want to play board games with me? By the way.
Yes. Yeah. So you held on to it for a while. It's not like we bounced off of it.
It's because it's a good game. It was always it's a good game, but it just was never getting played. And it's because it's just what you were saying. The times you're gonna pull it out is with kind of people newer to board games, kind of just a kind of an intro, and yet every single time I'm in that situation, I was choosing Ticket to Ride. I was maybe even going to a Quacks of Quedlinburg, stuff like that. So when a game doesn't get played, there it goes.
Yeah, we're pretty relentless. We get rid of a lot of good games.
It's an understatement. Yes.
It's brutal. We take them out back and we burn them in a bonfire. No, we typically sell them.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So number 8, I think, is actually very similar. kind of in category to Azul in that it's one that seems to have been elevated to this higher status of just like best in class in this kind of medium weight
Might
Euro
be the game that we like the most on this list.
It's one of the ones we like the most, Ryan. And we got it early on, like shortly after it came out, way back in 2011 or something. Played it probably 20 times. So it's like we played a lot, enjoyed it, and we just kind of, I think, got to the point where I wasn't feeling super compelled to come back to it. Mm-hmm. Just got a really, really beautiful new reprint recently. This is the Castles of Burgundy. And this is a Stefan Feld design, and Stefan Feld has a very specific kind of design of these, very mechanical. They don't typically have very high production value. I mean, the original Castles of Burgundy, it wasn't exactly a looker, and the little chits were like borderline cardstock in their thickness. But it's a really solid game with you're rolling the 2 dice and you're using those results to take these actions on the board to draft tiles and fill up your estate. And it all was really nice, and we had a lot of fun with it. I'm surprised just how loved this game is, though. I mean, it is really there. I mean, it's very high in the rankings. I see it popping up on people's favorite games lists. Obviously, the new edition, I mean, it was like bound to do amazing, because if people were loving it when it didn't look good, just imagine if you give it the Kickstarter treatment, and they did.
Right.
It's a giant box now, and so I've been hearing a lot about it again because people getting the new edition and loving it. And so it is interesting, because this is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, that game was, I like that game, but in a sea of kind of medium weight Euro games, especially like dice. There's a lot of Euro games that kind of use dice in clever ways. You know, we've talked about like Trois and Lorenzo Il Magnifico and others on the channel. I'm surprised that this is the one that seems to have like reached that status.
You know, it is interesting just with like how games get popular, because I feel like there's a certain point where if a game can build enough momentum of like people talking about it and stuff, well then people get the game because they're hearing it talked, and I don't know, I feel like it kind of can sometimes snowball a little bit. Not just, and again, we both, this is a really good game.
It is.
But it is surprising, especially just in the kind of board game landscape today, that this is, seen as one of the best. Whereas I think both of us are like, yeah, it's a good game, but I think we're missing the like, why is this one of the greatest,
and we've played a few Stefan Feld designs. I think you still have Carpe Diem. Is that right?
I do. That is an ugly game.
Yeah, you thought Castles of Burgundy looked
ugly, right?
Well, and that one's like functionally bad. Like it's like hard to tell. You had to like put like stickers on the back of things.
They have these tiles that you need to keep them distinct. And one of them is a light green, and one of them is a slightly darker green. And you have to hold it under the right light to determine. I'm like, this is horrible, man.
Yeah. So we've played Castles of Burgundy. We've played Carpe Diem. We played one game of Trajan, however you pronounce that one.
Play that on.
Yeah, I think it was on Tabletop Simulator. And I think I've found with Stefan Feld designs, they're the kind of games that I'm like, man, it's a fun little puzzle. I enjoy playing with it, but there's just not enough there in either exciting variability or just to want me to keep coming back to and to own it and be like, this is a game I'm going to play over and over. Castles of Burgundy was probably the closest to that, and it did stay in my collection for quite a while. But I kind of just got to the point where I was kind of done with it, whereas there's other games in that weight that for me feel more evergreen for my taste.
I agree.
Number 7 is maybe not as popular as Castles of Burgundy. And actually, this is the only one on the list that I have played and Daniel has not played. So, Daniel, if you could just
don't worry, I'll still hate
be
on it.
Silent. Yeah. Just chat GPT over there and some peanut gallery comments.
What are some mean things?
This is a beautiful game, a game that I thought maybe my wife would enjoy, maybe kind of a little bit more accessible gateway game that has a very appealing theme. This is Meadow, which is a nature-themed game, coming on the back of just a flood of nature-themed games that I think Wingspan broke the gates open for that to happen.
I know.
And it's this game of collecting these little cards that all of these beautiful watercolor illustrations. It looks really nice. And you're kind of building up your habitat. And the way you're selecting cards is there's this grid and you use these little arrow tokens you have. So you have one that's like 3. And so when you point that on a side of the grid, it'll take the card that's 3 in from that side. And you can kind of come from any angle. So everybody's kind of like selecting cards that way, which is like kind of interesting. But in the end, it's just like, ultimately, there's certain cards you can get to and certain cards you can't, and you have to like figure out what that is. And then so in the end, I feel like you're kind of getting to the same end result of just like, which of these card selections are you most interested in right now? You just have a little puzzle to kind of figure it out. For me, the big thing with this game, I think there were 2 things. One, the game, while it looked so good, the gameplay was just kind of forgettable for me. Like, you're doing this, you're getting these cards that you can kind of stack on each other, but there just wasn't that much meat to it, which was fine if that's what that game was going to be.
Yeah, and weren't you looking to play this kind of with your wife too?
Yeah. And so like it was like, okay, right. that could be fine. That could be what this game needs to be. I think the killer was pairing that with it being a like 90-minute game. And like and really with the number of players. Like I remember we played a 4-player game of this and I think it was over an hour and a half. And it's like, man, what the gameplay has given me, this game would have to be like a half hour for me to like feel like it's hitting right. If you're gonna go longer than that, you got to be giving me something more here. It just, I don't know. I just didn't find it all that compelling, and so then the length of it made it an easy choice to. And I played it a few times, but it was just like this. Just I am not gonna be vouching to get this one to the table because every time I'm gonna be like, man, this is gonna be way longer than we probably want it to be.
Man, Ryan, hearing that, it gives me nightmares of my 2.5-hour Love Letter Premium game. And, that's when I knew that game had
Wonder
to go,
what Dangle did wrong for that to happen. Yes. So
nice.
That's all I really have to say about Meadow, and Dangle doesn't have anything to say about Meadow, so we might as well move on.
Yeah, except I do agree the artwork was I did really like the artwork when I saw pictures of it.
Yes, it looks very nice. Which it's so hard to know how much of that is why it's popular, because for a lot of people that carries more weight than maybe it did for me. But for me, Meadow kind of fell flat. Onward to number 6, which is a game that Daniel has played, though may not remember much better than Meadow, which he... I don't know how...
I remember how I felt after this game, I tell you that.
So this is a game that I was seeing pop up. It was getting some buzz, and it kind of fitted into an interesting thing of like, it plays in all of 15, 20 minutes, but is actually more of a crunchy, kind of gamery game that's really unique. And I was like, that could fit a really nice spot in my collection. Ended up getting it. This is the King is Dead 2nd edition, the new edition of it. And ultimately, this is a game that for me, there's a few games that land in this specific bucket. And it's this bucket of it felt to me more interesting than fun. It's so interesting. The design is fascinating. And like, because it's this little area control thing where there's like 3 different countries and 3 different like countries that are competing over the regions. There's like 3 different colors of cubes. It's you don't have minis in this game. But the way you're nobody owns any of those. At the end of the game, it's going to be which of those factions won, like had controlled the most regions. So say the yellow cubes did. But then it's which player has the most influence in the faction that won. So throughout the game, you're playing cards to manipulate, add cubes, move things around, manipulate the map, keeping in mind that you could help the position of something, but then somebody else could like actually get the influence in that. So it's this really weird like checks and balances. But then at the end of your turn, you have to take a cube off, which weakens that faction, and that's what determines what you're invested in. So there's always this decision of, I need to choose who I want to be more, invested in by making them weaker in some area to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's really mind melting because it's such a fine line between helping yourself and accidentally helping other people. Because you're like, well, I did that. And then you're like, crap.
I don't like that line.
Literally. Yeah. And it also had the weird thing with like, everybody has like the same 8 cards, but you can pass. I forget exactly how the passing works, but there was this dynamic that like, you could finish all your cards and you're done. But other people may have more cards left and they can finish out more. And so again, there were so many things in this. It was one of those ones when you read the rule book, you're like, man, this is cool. Like, this is really cool how this works.
Right.
But I played it a couple times and it was just like, I don't think I'm actually having that much fun. Like, and the decisions, like, I don't know. I felt like the only way it was going to get to the table was me being like, hey, you guys want to try something kind of weird, like, and fun? Or kind of weird. Like, it's like a weird experiment, and it'll be fun to try the weird experiment.
Yeah.
But for me, that wasn't going to be something I'm going to want to come back to over and over again.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was happy I played it once, and I'm happy I'm not going to play it again.
Yeah. And, if it came up down the road that like an opportunity to play it, I would play it again. But when I'm looking at my collection, it's like, these are games I want to play over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And King is Dead was not one of those for me.
Dead.
Another that wasn't. Parts. Speaking of games that didn't stay in the collection, everything on this list. Number 5 is interesting because our initial impression of it was really strong. I remember we were all in the same game on this. It was us and like our siblings. Really fun first play of this. And it was like, man, what a unique game in my collection.
I put it on almost like a must buy on my collection after the first play.
And slowly overplaying it more, I think we found that the novelty kind of wore off a bit. This is Awkward Guess, which is this really interesting, think kind of like clue deduction, but kind of in this a little bit more complex and like different how you're kind of sharing information and deducing. Everybody has this map of the house. You're trying to figure out, who killed Mr. Welton, what was their motive and like, what did they use or something. And the way you're deducing is everybody has these cards that'll tell you different things, like where, somebody was, or it's been a little while. I don't remember exactly different types of clues. But on your turn, you basically, people offer you cards from their hand that they're like, I'll give you, these cards face down. And they have like numbers that kind of indicate like how valuable the information is. And if you decide you want to trade with them, you have to give them an equal number of cards from your hand. So there's kind of like this trading of information. You get new information and then you get to make deductions. And that all was like very fun and very interesting in this.
Yeah.
I think there were a couple things that I found hurt this one. One was that for being a deduction game, the more you played it, the more you realized there wasn't a lot of real deduction going on. Like when I think real deduction, I think like, oh, because I know this and I know this over here, I can infer this brand new piece of information.
It's like Search for Planet X. Like
yes, which I feel like is stronger with real deduction.
Really a strong deduction.
Here it was like, I get a card so I can cross this thing off on my sheet. And now I got this other thing, so I can rule this out.
Right.
And so it was more of just like slowly ruling things out than ever. There was the very rare thing. It was honestly one of my favorite things in the game was when the map itself, it was like, oh, because their route would have to go this way and that wouldn't have crossed the room that had the weapon, but it was like less than 5% of the things you did in this game was that type of. And so that was a little bit like, okay, once the novelty wears off of kind of this being a new thing, it's a little bit of feeling like you're going through the motions of just, and it's satisfying to cross the things off, but it wasn't quite the deductive experience that maybe we were hoping it would be.
The other thing I didn't like about this game, we talked about the sharing of clues was kind of a fun element of it. But it kind of was this awkward thing, where I'm going to offer you clues. If you're being competitive, you could just give someone information back that they gave to you earlier. And it would be really mean. And it's like, do I do that? So it's like this weird position of like,
you're like, sorry, I don't even know if this is what you gave me.
That was, actually, because normally we're like, okay, that's kind of against the spirit of the game to just send someone back what they gave you earlier. So I want to, give something different, but then you forget that the person gets the cards and they're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm sorry. So just the trading of clues is kind of just this like weird, like, oh, I don't even know what to give you.
And I think the more I played it, I also realized how valuable some of those highest level clues are. To the point where if I get dealt one of those initially, the competitive side of my brain is saying, I'm never giving this to anybody. I'm going to wait until, because there's opportunities in the game where you can discard. I'm like, I'm going to hold this. I'm going to be the only one that knows it. And then I'm going to discard it. And it's just like, okay, is that like really the experience we want to have here? Yeah. So it was a little weird with the clue giving.
Never like when competitiveness and this kind of spirit of the game are like at odds with each other. Yeah, the fun factor. So I think that was another kind of weird
on top of that, the nail in the coffin for this was probably that it was a little too long for what it was, and maybe a little hard to teach. And it wasn't originally in English, and some of the there's specifically one type of clue that what it describes on the card does not make any sense. And you always have to explain, if you get this card, what it's really saying is this weird thing. And I was like, man, I wish I could just take these out of the game. Because literally just having to explain that one card is making this rules teach harder. So yeah, it kind of was a steep decline after that first play. I mean, we played it a number of times after that. Fun experiences, but it really felt like one of those ones that's more fun to try, and play, but maybe not own.
For sure.
Speaking of game, so that was a game that we had a very positive first impression of.
Is this our worst first experience?
I wouldn't say it was our worst, but it was very clear that it was this game is not one I'm going to be holding on to. Had gotten it as a gift. I think it was just you, your wife, me, and our older brother actually that played it. I think it was the four of us.
It was a little late too.
It was a little late. And so there were maybe some factors in play. Your first play, I just learned it from the rule book.
Yeah.
But this is Whistle Mountain. And Whistle Mountain has a lot of really cool things going on of you're working together to build this scaffolding that's going up as the water level is rising. And then you're landing your little blimp zeppelin things to take actions on the scaffolding, and it's based on what you're adjacent to, and you can if you can land your size of zeppelin in a way that it touches more than one thing, you can get multiple rewards
sweet.
From it. It's really cool. But holy cow, talk about a game that the decision space is like an ocean. Because anytime you can play scaffolding or any kind of building out there, it's this grid that is very flexible. The rules aren't very restricting. It's you could put things almost however you want. And so you're sitting there trying to think of every implication of everywhere you could put it. But then you have that same kind of overload whenever you're landing your blimp things, because it's there's so... I mean, think of a normal worker placement game. There's a discrete number of worker placement spots that you can go. Mm-hmm. In this, it's you can literally go anywhere you can go on a grid, and it brings it down a little bit because you want to go close to some of these different actions. But man, and I think there were even a few other things in the games with some of the upgrades you could get or things that just I think we broke our older brother.
Oh my gosh.
If you in this game try to think through what's the best move I can make right now,
oh my gosh,
the amount you would have to consider is so much. I basically came to the conclusion that the people that are going to enjoy this game are people that are okay, kind of just flying with their guts.
Yeah,
it's this feels like a good.
Sure.
Which there's times where I think I'm okay with that, but it felt like I should be thinking about, and I don't know, it just came to a crawl in our session of it. We were just,
oh my gosh,
it was so brutal. Slow, and so it ended up being very long, and yeah, very, very cool things, but it just was I don't think I want to play that again.
Yeah, well, and to have such a, it's, I mean, that was a prime game moment, of you could pick your best hitter and to have an experience.
Yeah, I look back on it because the other game I remember, we were at an Airbnb with our family, and the other game I had brought was Dune Imperium.
Oh,
and I knew,
so good.
And I was our older brother would probably like it. And in hindsight, I was we could have played Dune Imperium.
Yeah, and now he's never talked to us since.
Yeah, so, never, ever since the Whistle Mountain debacle of 2019 or whatever that was.
Broke the family.
Yeah, cool game. I think there are some people that would enjoy it, but wasn't for us. My brain couldn't handle it. Alrighty, we're number 3 here, Daniel, is possibly the most popular game on this list. Probably.
Probably, yeah.
And I've only played it once. You've played it more. You liked it more than I did. It was only recently that you got rid of it. I mean, it was in your top games. But the difference between how we feel about it and how other people feel about it is still pretty big.
Right.
And this is Scythe. And maybe I'll let you lead on this one. Your perspective, just from you played it more times than I did.
Yeah, so this one was one that really drew me in. One, presentation, just beautiful. Like the board and everything just looks awesome. And I always love that. And mechanically, like really cool. Like I love like the action, you got your kind of action board that you're, kind of in a very Stonemaier games. They have a kind of common thing where, you got your 4 actions, kind of like Wingspan or something like that. And then you can upgrade things on your board, so you're making things more powerful. So there were a lot of things that were really cool about this game, and I think that's why it kind of stayed in my collection for a while. The things that didn't land, in my experience, one, it was like the game mechanically was set up for this awesome experience, but then what always ended up playing out left me extremely underwhelmed.
Yeah.
One, I had multiple games where the winner was basically whoever got enough movement or was able to just like run around and get all these explore tiles, like or the little explore tokens, which those explore things are cool. But like they were just kind of running around doing that, and I don't know. So I was like, okay. I also the whole like you produce resources. But then, like, someone can just, if they kill you, they just take your resources.
Yeah.
And that's more of probably personal preference. Like, some people might really like that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's more of just kind of our personality.
Well, and I more than you struggle with like hybrid style games.
Yeah.
Because like we definitely like these games that are build your own thing, work on your own thing. And I even enjoy a number of games that are, pretty high conflict. But when you start to try to do them together, it's tricky to get it to land for me because you're giving me the feeling of wanting to build my own thing, but then allowing that to be interfered with is like kind of in competition with the core enjoyment of that side of the thing. And so I always come away from them like liking but not loving them in most instances.
Yeah, and for me, just like the progression of the game, it was like, okay, you start the game and it's getting like more and more exciting and you feel like it's kind of building. And then right as it's like, you feel like you're about to like kind of get into the point of the game that maybe is going to deliver like the bulk of the excitement. It just always felt like the game, I just always felt like the way the game ended, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, it's over.
Yeah.
Or so, I don't know. It just, the ending wasn't that great for me. And probably the last thing, the kind of the way the bulk of the scoring is you're like claiming these, and I don't know the title of it, but I don't know, objectives that are kind of at the top of the board. You can claim those, but it's like that times your, popularity, the little like heart thing that you're going up. And I just felt like in the decision making, you could have decisions where it's like maybe you get an explore card and it's like you could do this, or you could do something that gives you a heart. It was always just like, okay, well, I should probably do the heart because that's going to multiply my scoring. It just personal feelings. It felt like this, like the bulk of the scoring was like me doing this extra like peripheral thing to boost my score versus like something that's deeply integrated with like what I'm doing. Again, someone who absolutely loves Scythe might 100% disagree with that. That's totally fine. That's just, I'm just trying to, remember some of that. So yeah, and that's it's not a short game. Like you're talking about, this is like, prime gaming slot main event. And every time I played it, it was always like, and I remember probably the best situation, I had a bunch of guys that like, they play Scythe all the time. I got absolutely whooped, and that probably didn't help. But it was like the perfect group. And even in that, it was just like, yeah, that was good. But also I just, at the end was like, man, it just didn't our favorite games leave us going, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Yeah. That was just so much fun. And the game just never did that. Never did that for me. So,
and I'll be the first to admit, I played it one time and it was not a good play. Just the way it played out, it ended really prematurely because we had a player that kind of ran away with it, and then somebody else made a mistake that basically let that player steal all these resources. So they were already ahead and they just catapulted. Yeah. So I was definitely left with I kind of had a plan of how I wanted to upgrade and do this, and I didn't get to do anything. But I realized that was more a symptom of that play. But even, researching and stuff, and maybe it is largely the kind of hybrid style that I just was I don't know if this is going to be for me. But yeah, a lot of people love it. I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite game.
For sure.
But not one that we have held on to. I hate to keep this going here on a Stonemaier Games. We enjoy a lot of our Stonemaier games. Our Stonemaier games are doing, but a couple entries here. This is one that very popular worker placement game. Especially, I think what made me really start considering it more strongly is the way it shot up Tom Vasel from the Dice Tower, his top 100 list. This was all the way up into the teens or somewhere up there. And it was okay, it's a game that, goes to 6. It has a nice theme. This is Viticulture. And Viticulture is a nice, fine game. It's a little bit of a weird game because the way they've iterated on it makes the product line very confusing because there's the Essential Edition, but then there's the Tuscany expansion. People are you need the Tuscany expansion and all this. But I had the Essential Edition. I didn't have the Tuscany expansion, which is probably people in the comments that are if you tried it with Tuscany, it would change your mind. But from what I understand, I don't think it directly addresses some of the things that I, didn't like about Viticulture. So one of the things that bothered me a little bit of Viticulture was just the uber randomness in the cards. And now there are a lot of games I love that have tons of randomness in the cards, like Terraforming Mars or Ark Nova or some of these. But there's a lot of these cards in Viticulture which are and it's been a while, so forgive me, but you can get something, or if you meet some condition or something, you can get points. And so there's times where you get card draws late in the game, and one player could get it and be there's either this engine building thing that it's way past the point where that would be helpful. Right. And this thing I can't do, this card is literally worthless to me. Someone else could get to draw a card and go, I already have this. This is 2 points, which could win the game. Oh, that could, right. And so that always felt a little bit even if you're on the side of the one drawing the card, it felt a little bit well, that was lucky. I didn't really do anything to,
totally.
And whereas I think some of these other games that have luckiness in cards, it's more obscured in how you have to use the cards. It's maybe you got some cards that went really well together, but you still had to kind of make it happen. This was guys, I just drew 2 points. Yay.
In a race to 20.
In a race. And so that's the other big thing here is the race. And I found that I did not like the race because it basically, once somebody gets to 20 or above, that's the final round. And it's that paired with the way that you primarily get points in this game is by growing the grapes, turning them into the wine. You have to put them in the cellar to age the wine. It's this multi-step process, okay? And it's a multi-step process that you can't really accelerate. It typically is going to take multiple turns for you to get this to ultimately fulfill a wine order. And so almost every time I played this, what would happen is somebody realizes in the last round, oh, I could actually make a run for 20 points this turn. Maybe it's because they drew one of those cards and oh, suddenly I can. But they realize they can do it. And so they start taking actions that everybody else is oh, they're going for it. And what happens is those people look at what they're doing and go, well, I'm in step 3 of 4 of my big move, right? That's going to do these big wine orders. Right. And there is nothing I can do about that. Next turn, I was going to turn this all into all these points, but you're ending it this turn. And so then I'm left this round kind of walking through the motions of well, where can I squeak out some points? But I completely lose any satisfaction of finishing what I was doing and converting it to points. And so it kind of felt like you're almost guaranteed there's going to be players at the table that have this like really crappy feeling to finish the game.
Yeah.
Which is like,
the final round ideally should be the most exciting point in the game, right? It should be when you're doing your biggest things, and most of the table is like, ugh.
Yeah, and it made me realize the advantage to the alternative kind of design choice, which would be something like maybe a Terra Mystica, Age of Innovation. We've talked some of these games where everybody knows the amount of rounds. It's like we have 6 rounds. And the advantage of that is in this type of game where you're planning and doing multi-turn things to, make things happen, you always get the satisfaction of finishing on your own terms. Now, you sometimes botch that, but you can know that you could have done things differently. Yeah, you Daniel specifically. I'm not talking to the audience
directing
here.
That at me, right?
Yeah. But in viticulture, it can be like you didn't even know. You thought for sure we were going to have another round. And then you're just left with this and that's kind of a symptom. It's something, there's some advantages to race mechanics. That's one of the downsides to race mechanics is oftentimes when somebody can make it, the other people realize it and realize that they're going to fall short. And so for me, that really paired with the randomness, it really killed viticulture for me. I still enjoy it. I still rate it decently. I'd probably rate it 7.5, but it just, it wasn't one that I was going to keep around.
Yeah, I agree.
Which brings us to our number 1, which
oh boy.
Haters, I enjoy this game quite a bit. And this will not be because of lack of plays. I've played this almost 20 times, I think. And this is a game that on paper seemed very tailored to our taste. Because we love cooperative games. We love games like Mage Knight with like cards and card effects and variable player powers and all of this. Everything pointed that we should love Spirit Island. And for a long time, I liked Spirit Island quite a bit. But slowly realized things that I did. I learned a lot about myself through playing Spirit Island and what I like in a co-op game.
That's good.
Which is good. But I tell you, this is, you see this popping up so often as people's favorite game of all time. And it's really big in the solo community as well.
Right.
It's got a lot of good things going for it. There are a few things specifically, and this is one that over 20 games, I was able to really diagnose what wasn't working for me. One thing I learned about myself is in a cooperative game, I love the drama of an unexpected opponent. Like when we talk about some of our favorite games, whether it be Eldritch or some of these, and there are varying levels of how much luck is in the game, and that's why a lot of people might not like those. But I do really like when the opposition is throwing you curveballs and something happens and oh my gosh. And the breadth of the types of things that can happen is a lot of different things. Right. In Spirit Island, you know almost everything that is going to happen. You know exactly which region they're going to ravage in. You know exactly which region they're going to build in. The only unknown really is which one they're going to explore in. Which even that you can deduce a little bit based on what's been drawn, and then you're going to know that. And so it's very known, which is what a lot of people like about it, because it shifts it from being this randomness of the opponent, and instead it's presenting this puzzle for you to figure out the solution to with your cards. But then on top of that, the variance in the types of things that can happen is not very much. It's like they explore, they build, they ravage, and it's a bunch of just little guys that are all kind of the same.
Right.
The map very quickly becomes a sea of kind of the same stuff that sets the puzzle for how you're going to kind of clear things out. So that was one big thing for me is just lacking that drama excitement in a cooperative game. The second thing was kind of the game arc. In Spirit Island, at least in our games, we typically found you go through these rounds of, oh my gosh, they're spreading. What are we going to do? But you're getting more powerful, which is a lot of the fun of Spirit Island. You get new cards, you're upgrading your, spirit. And typically we would get to a point where we get over that hump. Sorry, this is turning into Ryan rant to Dango about Spirit Island. But
no.
You get over this hump of, oh, we turned the tide, right? We got this under control. We can maybe start thinking about regions that are, just being explored or being built instead of just worrying about what's currently being ravaged.
Yeah.
And typically, once you get over that hump and you're only getting more powerful as spirits, you're going to win the game.
Yeah.
But usually there's at least a round or two that you have to finish out the game. And for me, that is like a no-no in cooperative games. Yeah. Like, I want my cooperative games to have tension right up into the end.
You want the last.
If I know I'm going to win, we win. I don't want to play more with that being a known entity, because the draw of the cooperative game is are we going to?
Which is why we like our cooperative games so hard.
We like cooperative games hard
cooperative games.
Spirit Island is very tunable, and that's probably what some people will say to this, is like, you just got to tune it to where that hump is right at the right spot so that you win. And maybe that's true, but man, that's asking a lot to like pick the exact difficulty for the exact group to like get the exact experience that you're looking for. So didn't love that. The third thing is, one of the things people like about Spirit Island, and I agree this is a nice trait, is it really avoids like alpha gaming of one person directing everything, mainly because there's just so much to think about. Like with your spirit and what cards you have, it would be very difficult for someone. They'd really have to go out of their way to be like telling people exactly what to play.
Yep.
And so everybody's kind of doing their own thing and figuring out, what can I do with my slow powers and fast powers this turn to address things. But this is a cooperative game. We're working together on the map. And so there needs to be a certain level of, well, what are you accomplishing and what am I accomplishing? And so everybody's kind of simultaneously solving this puzzle. And usually I'll throw out like, oh, I think I can get these guys over here. Okay, so you're not going to think about that. You're going to worry about over here. And so everybody's doing that. And it's a crunchy puzzle here. We're talking of how you could play these and how you do this. And so you kind of get to where you maybe figure something out. But if anybody realizes something like, oh, I actually could do this, like get this along with this, or, oh, I actually don't have enough to do this, you've like reset everybody else's puzzle, because now it's like, oh, I need to do that. Well, I have to completely do something different. Or like, oh, you're doing the thing I thought I was focusing on. You realize that your super combo actually took care of it.
Care of it, right?
And so it's like, well, I got to find something new to do. And so, man, you can get into some long planning periods. Like if you even bump from 2 to 3 players, the amount, I really wouldn't want to play with 4. But the amount of that can happen of somebody, just the interactions and staying on the same page, really slows it down. And it doesn't feel as excitingly dynamic cooperation as maybe we get from some of these other games. Now, I could see 2 players that really know Spirit Island and know each other's spirits just really locking in and being able to work really well. But for me, that was definitely a downside for it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting? This game in some ways feels similar to like Mage Knight, a game that we love in terms of like cards, kind of complex things. But in Mage Knight, you're kind of off for most of the game. You're kind of off by yourself. So you don't really have to like, do, and then even in the end, you're fighting the same thing. You're
and you like, even kind of get to do your own separate battles within that.
Right.
But Mage Knight does have, randomized enemies that do have a wide range of kind of exciting abilities that can be thrown against you in the combinations.
On the enemy side of things.
And so I can see the appeal of Spirit Island. I see for a lot of people where they bounce off these other cooperative games because they don't enjoy that randomness and they don't like losing because of a random output. And so Spirit Island presents them with this very low randomness puzzle that they can then feel very clever with how you use your cards and do this. But for me, the things I talk about it's like I end up losing more of what I love than what I gain in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like Spirit Island is the board game for people who don't typically like cooperative games.
It is what I see. Oftentimes it's people are like, I finally found a heavier cooperative game I really like. And it's like, okay, that makes sense to me.
Right.
Why that happens. There you have it. And like we said, these are good games. Like we
good games.
But hopefully we were able to articulate why these did not land as we had hoped for us and did not hang around in our collections. if you feel free to defend your favorite game down and explain why maybe it works better for you. But hopefully you found it interesting why these ones maybe did not land for us.
Well, hopefully you didn't click off already, hit a thumb down because we hated on your favorite game. But thank you for watching. And if you want to hear more about us talking about games that maybe didn't land for us super well, we actually have a whole playlist to our games that we've culled from our collections. You can click on that here if you want to check that out. We've got another video here as well, and we will see you in the next one.